And many thanks for joining us on the program, People, Politics, and Power. I am Imonia Marire. Now, on Wednesday, November 29, 2023, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu presented the 2024 budget estimates to a joint session of the National Assembly. It was the first full budget proposal of the Tinubu administration, having only sent a supplementary budget request for 2023 to the Assembly previously. President Tinubu presented the 2024 budget exactly 6 months after taking office. The president said the proposed 2024 budget is aimed at cementing macroeconomic stability, reduce deficits, increase capital spending, and allocations to reflect the 8 priority areas of his administration. Accordingly, a cursory look shows that the government's priorities will be in the areas of defense and internal security, human capital development, especially for children, poverty reduction, and sustainable, resilient, and clean energy future. The document projects a total of 27.5 trillion naira, with 8.7 trillion naira earmarked for capital expenditure, 9.92 trillion naira for recurrent expenditure, 8.25 trillion naira for debt servicing, representing 45% of expected revenue, and a planned budget deficit of 9.18 trillion naira, which represents 3.88% of gross domestic product (GDP). The budget estimate is built on the parameters of $77.96 per barrel of oil benchmark at 1.78 million barrels daily production and a 3.76% growth rate, with inflation put at 21.4%. The exchange rate is pegged at 750 naira to $1 US. The government hopes to leverage on private capital for what it describes as big-ticket infrastructure projects and new borrowings to the tune of 7.83 trillion naira. Now, 1.05 trillion naira multilateral and bilateral loans and 298 billion naira privatization process to achieve its budget goals. The new borrowings represent a little less than 1/3 of the total budget value of 27.5 trillion naira. Well, while Nigerians await a further breakdown of the allocations of the budget, which expectedly the Ministry of Finance will be doing in the days to come, we shall be looking at the general principles of the budget and the direction it is likely to take the economy in 2024. Can it pull the economy out of the woods and put it on a path of a steady recovery? Some early critics of the budget have already described it as deceitful, strangulation, suffocating, hopeless, and lacking in mechanisms for economic recovery. Now, does it look prospective for the alleviation of the current hardships in the country? How will it impact the common person? Well, I'm joined in the studio by a seasoned economist, Mr. Steve Nwachukwu, who will be helping me to understand the 2024 budget proposals and how it will impact the Nigerian economy and the Nigerian people. Mr. Nwachukwu, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. My pleasure. My pleasure.
All right, we'll go on a short break, and when we return, we'll be delving straight into our discussion.
Of our dream, the Nigeria we need is the united, indissoluble, and cohesive Nigeria, which guarantees equity, fairness, justice, and prosperity for its citizens. That is our focus on people, politics, and power. It is fresh, insightful, impactful. It's a must-watch. People, politics, and power on AIT.
Well, thank you so much for staying with us. My guest is a seasoned economist, Mr. Steve Nwachukwu. Mr. Nwachukwu, welcome once again.
My pleasure.
Right, so let's look at the budget estimates that were presented before a joint session of the National Assembly on Wednesday by President Bola Ahmed Tinubu. First, let me have your overview of the 27.5 trillion naira budget, perhaps the highest so far in the history of budgets in Nigeria.
Thank you so much. First, budget is a ritual. It's a basic thing every government, both at the subnational levels. You must have to present budget. In the context of budget, budget represents your wishes, aspiration, what you feel to do for your people. And all of them will be articulated in that format, and it's called appropriation bill. In money terms, that's why you have figures attached to each line items. So the budget of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu simply is his wishes, his thinking, how he thinks he can solve political and economic issues of Nigerians. So that is what is represented in the budget. Now the question is, based on the assumptions of the budget and based on the promises of renewed hope, with the contents of those line items in the budget, will it solve the right issues or the issue he has earlier raised the hopes of Nigerians? I love the idea about the term of the theme of the budget, which is renewed hope. You know, in our sense of hope, life is hopeless. And that's why both our religious leaders, even our political leaders, often inspires hopes in us. So giving us hope that, yes, this budget will deliver in these areas of infrastructure, in the areas of transportation. It will go far in reducing the sufferings of Nigeria. But most people have looked at this budget and critically seen faults and some lines of benefits. One is, just like you said earlier, 27.5 trillion, quite big, huge, first ever budget size Nigerian government have ever presented, 27.5 trillion. But in real terms, in value terms, this budget is even lower than 2023 budget. That may shock many Nigerians to know that 2024 budget in principle is quite lower to that of 2023 budget.
How
but
so?
in figure is higher. 21 against 24, 27. 27 is always. When you look at the budget parameter, how a budget is computed, you know you have oil benchmark, you have an exchange rate benchmark, and all are done in dollars. Then subject the 2024 budget to dollar. You find out that 2024 budget is around $34 billion. 2024, go against the 750 exchange rate. You find out the budget size is around $34 billion. While that of 2023 is closely approximately $50 billion. So in real terms, in principle itself, the 2023 budget is bigger and headier than 2024 budget. So those rhetorics that this budget is richer, is bigger, no. Ours is to look at the details and numbers and subject them to realities.
Is that because of
the
value of the naira today?
Exactly. That's why most of our conversation around the budget should be around the headiness of our exchange. Policies that will make sure that naira regain its strength should be what the government should focus on. Let's leave these numbers. These numbers are deceiving. 27.5 trillion. Probably National Assembly in their usual manner will take it up to somewhere 28. That is expected because the Constitution gives them the power to do the real appropriation, tinker and lift or reduce. But we've not seen them reduce since the inception of the Fourth Republic. They've always added. That's why the issue of pardon, issue of whatever is found there during the budget appropriation. So we expect a minimum of 28 trillion size of budget. That is expected. 28 trillion is expected, or somewhere around that. So what are we saying? Yes, you have 27.5 trillion size of budget. Is it rich enough to attack the basic economic issues that is facing Nigeria? I would say you may attempt them, but if you don't put policies that will actually do the real work for you, these numbers will not do the work for you. The real thing that will do the work for you is put down policies and your posture of administration that will see oil production up, even above the budget benchmark of 1.7 million barrels per day, to somewhere around 2 million. Good enough, you recently went to Saudis to invite those guys that has the expatriates, perhaps that have done it well in their own home country, to help you up production. These are the only way you can defend. If you don't defend Naira, the budget is useless. Let me repeat it again. If you don't make Naira to have its value, so that those 27 trillion will be valuable to purchase those materials or procure those very budget line items that you needed to execute in the coming year 2024. The budget is rubbish. Let me say it again. The budget is big. One can say it's big for nothing. Big for nothing in the sense that you have caused much damage to the budget, implementation of the budget, which is the exchange rate. Why would you use 750? You would have used the 700 you earlier talked about a couple of weeks ago. You recently reversed it to 750. You have decided to pursue a policy on devaluation of Naira. And the more you continue to devalue Naira, the more the Naira or the components of the budget remain useless. Take, for instance, you want to do a project of 1 trillion Naira. As of 2022, 2021 or 2023, you could possibly execute those jobs at the rate of that 1 trillion. But in 2024, that budget has been vowed to somewhere around 1.3 to 1.4. So invariably, you have achieved nothing. Having a 27 is better we have a 16, 17, 18 trillion size of budget than having 27 that cannot be able to be impactful in the lives of Nigeria. That's all we are saying. Deal with the issue of defending the exchange because, unfortunately, all the budget line items, 60 to 50% of the component of those materials that will be used in the aviation, in the works, in the water resources, name it, they have a component of dollar. You have to buy those materials. You are using dollar to buy it. And it's Naira against dollar. So if Naira is not strong, you will continue to carry Ghana must go to do a project of, you would have just used a single stash of Naira notes to buy or to execute. So this is what we are saying. Deal with the real issues. Let those items in the budget, let it focus on addressing two major things. One is the supply curve, and two is the demand curve. If time will permit, we'll be able to detail on this demand and supply curve, which has to do with your strength. Your demand is the strength of your production. The appetite for foreign made products. See policies that will encourage local manufacturer of goods.
We'll come back to that demand and supply curve. But let's get back to the two issues that you have put on the table, all of which have to do with having to strengthen the power of the Naira. One of which is increasing oil production from the 1.7 million barrels per day that is the benchmark for the 2024 budget, and of course defending the Naira. and making it much stronger. How, beyond these two, I mean, I've always known that, I mean, in economists, you cannot be talking of defending your currency if you are not producing anything. If all you do is consumption, import and consumption, what else can be done? What else must this government do to show up the value of the naira?
Unfortunately, these are the only two basic things that the government needs to do. And these are the two issues they first tackled. At the onset of this administration, they took the wrongest decision. The issues around the removal of fuel subsidy and the issue of devaluation or flotation or harmonization or what you may call it. These are the two critical issues, and they all have bearing to the strength of Naira. Nobody is saying that you should wake up and be defending Naira. Defend Naira with policies. Don't defend Naira by subsidy. That's what I'm saying.
There are those who argue that the government or previous government or various governments in Nigeria have actually been defending the Naira all these years.
Oh, yes, unfortunately, that was a wrong perspective to handle the issues around the strength of Naira. You can't defend the currency by incentive, and that's what all the past government has been doing. Unfortunately, he took away the incentives without doing the right thing. You have to substitute it with production. You have to substitute it with real-time demand, tackling the issues around demand. Now, the strength of Naira is subject to your balance of payment. Our balance of payment is so lopsided that you need to up production. And you can only do that when you encourage backward integration program or import substitution program. These are the only way you can. That's why I said they are not just throwing cash or budget line items. They are policies. Yes, you can also have some investments in those areas that requires budgeting and or appropriations. Quite good. But it has to be a determination and focus. The posture of the government to make sure that Naira is being defended based on its critical values around the Naira. Because the values is the appetite of Nigerians. If you on daily basis consume foreign-made products, that value to defend the Naira is not there. Because you are looking at other foreign products which hard currency like euro, dollar will be used to purchase them. So we have to do policies around the love and the use of Naira. And use of Naira is local production. Let's patronize what we produce. Encourage local production. And also help to standardize these very locally made products so that it can also go down well with those who are exchanging their money, hard-earned money, for such products. So it has to be a decisive policy of government that I'm going to aggressively deal with the issue of production in relationship with other foreign-made products that are competing with locally made products. It has to be a decision. I'm not suggesting that you have to ban products. Rather, you have to put up policies, perhaps that will increase tariff for some foreign-made products. That we keep saying, the best is not to close your border, because when you close your border, there are some international bilaterals that you have gone into that France are you closing your borders against. You have to operate a free market in the sense that you should allow goods. But nobody forbids you. No law forbids you to raise your tariff. To say, for instance, that for foreign-made rice, the tariff for 150 kg is 40,000. That will totally discourage importers of such items and will force Nigerians to at least value your locally made rice. It's our politics. You don't throw cash to them. So why most of us are so passionate about these issues is because if these issues are not tackled, it will cripple the economy. As we are heading, the next budget may be 40 trillion, and it's still valueless. That's the concern of most of us. People, hey, Buhari came, we were shocked. Please stop this reckless. He took over from Jonathan at a size budget of 6 trillion. He pushed it to 21 trillion. People were clapping, and he was there, raising our deficits, going to debt market to raise money, just like we have in this very budget of 9.1 trillion as deficits that definitely is going to hit the debt market to borrow. So Buhari administration saw the budget of Jonathan of 2015 at 6 trillion, less than 6 trillion. Less than 6 trillion. He moved it to somewhere 8, somewhere 9, 10, 13, 16, and 21. And here we are. And Naira have lost its value since that, more than 1,000 times. So our concern, or most of us who have privilege to look at these numbers and data, is to tell the government the hard truth.
Okay.
Your policy should be rather in making sure that is the strength and power of our Naira stronger.
Now, let's look at the relationship between some of the priorities that this government has set for itself, one of which is defense and internal security. Let's look at the relationship between those two and the quest to defend the Naira through production.
Of course, that's fantastic. That's good, because even if you have a 10 trillion size of budget for agriculture, and if you don't have security, you can't achieve it. So security is critical. I love the aspect of 12% allocation, of the size of 12% to defense. That's fantastic. We need to see that being applied in real terms. 3.2 or 3.5 trillion for defense. That's good. That's sizable enough. But unfortunately, but let's believe that we're going to see different things this time. In the last 7-8 years, the Buhari administration have allocated more than 35 trillion to defense for our internal security. You and I know how much safer we are. So we need to start seeing some level of efficiency in spending. We need to start seeing most of these budget line items being impactful to the lives of Nigerians. Even after this 30 trillion spending or thereabout, our farmers are becoming fugitives in their own land. They have left their ancestral homes. Farmers cannot go to farm. Some of them pay ransom to cultivate and harvest. So security, good enough, you have 12% allocation of the size of your budget to security, which amounts to over 3 trillion. Let's see this 3 trillion work. Let's see safer Nigeria. Let's see some level of security and peace. Let's cut down the criminalities in the land. So these are the realities we want. Let the budget be impactful. Is it good? It's fantastic. In fact, we need even to spend more than that. Because even the foreign direct investment that is looking at, it still boils down to security. So you even need to spend more on security. Whatever, even in education, that is the second, which is around 5 or 7% allocation. If you don't still have a secured environment, a secure school system, you cannot achieve the education allocation in education. So everything boils down to security. So that's why I said more should be even rather be spent on security, so that we have peace and tranquility in the land, so that every other aspect will be good. In fact, some contractors who do some of these federal roads or state roads, they put some budgets or whatever, they put some allocation for ransom, because they anticipate that one of their staff probably will be kidnapped or something. So they put such kind of contingencies in their budget or whatever, in the articulation of their pricing system. So security is very key, and I love the aspect that security took about 12%.
Now, closely related to that, Mr. Wanchukwu, is the whole issue of production in terms of industries in Nigeria. Because we are talking now of relying on local production, made products and all of that. And then the key issue of power generation comes in. How much of that is anticipated in this budget in addressing the power problem?
The truth is that, just like you said, some of these budget line items, excuse me, has not really been detailed. But what is allocated to power is not reasonable enough. Except, like he said, he's looking at foreign investors. Most of the FDIs is looking at those private sector to develop most of these power generations that we needed. Currently, we are still producing, or let's say distributing, less than 4,000 megawatts of electricity, still somewhere around 3,008 or thereabouts. So we need to up supply for electricity, because you cannot grow your own, you cannot develop your industry except you guarantee some level of power supply. You can have a cluster, a business zone, an economic zones where you have cluster of industries, where you dedicate 20-hour, 24-hour electricity supply to that zone, so that at least you reduce, because most of these rising inflation figures is a result of input costs. And input costs cannot be taken away from energy costs. Unfortunately, Nigeria have narrowed our own energy costs to petrol, fuel. That was why when he removed the fuel subsidy, everything went up by 200, 100%. So investment in this area, infrastructure development in energy, and also putting up policy to guarantee gas to power. Because 75% of our electricity generation is from turbines. Until, as we speak, I listened to the former Minister of Power and Works when he said it, that Nigeria has a capacity, installed capacity close to around 10 or 20,000 megawatts. But they are only evacuating or producing that 4,000 we are rejoicing every time he hits 4,000. Unfortunately, the installed capacity of those turbines is more than 10,000. But there is no guaranteed supply of gas. So what are the gas policy, available gas policy, that will guarantee supply of gas to these very turbines? And development of also facilities around the gas production, because it's not just the supply, because we still have issues around the production of gas. Gas, in fact, a couple of people have said Nigeria is not even an oil-rich country, rather a gas-rich country, because we have an abundant gas reserves. So government has to be deliberate, attract investment or put up investment in area of extracting this gas, so that you can guarantee supply of gas to these turbines. That's the only way you can have some level of reasonable power supplies to the industries. And that's what we help the local industry also to strive and help defend your naira. That's why I said defending naira is not by incentives. It's not by paying subsidies, maybe giving it to importers at a certain rate. No, it's to put up policies that will encourage this growing of locally made product, because the pressure on daily basis on naira to import items is where the government needs to defend, so that the pressure will be reduced. Now, import of petroleum products takes chunk of 20% of our import duties, or more than that. If government can, like I listened to them, that Port Harcourt refinery will soon be on stream, at least granting some level of 30 to 40% of production or refining of what we consume. It will reduce the pressure on naira. Like I said, these are not like you throw money to them. These are policies of government that will help this very naira, defend of naira.
Now, you are aware that immediately after the president presented this budget estimate, he flew off to Dubai for the COP28 summit. And of course, the world today is grappling with the whole issue of climate change and fossil fuel and all that. And our main export today, which is the petroleum, is fossil fuel. The other parts of the world are looking at moving away from fossil fuel. Well, here the president spoke during the budget presentation on what he described as a sustainable, resilient, and clean energy future. Now, if we look at that, and we look at our almost 100% dependence on fossil fuel, what does the future look like?
Let's be sincere to ourselves. We're all Nigerians, and we know that in the next 10, 15, 20 years, fossil fuel-related revenue will still be the chunk of our revenue incomes. And if we're still having this posture of deceiving the West, okay, because they promised $100 billion investment in non-fossil related energy and the rest of them. And you think you go there, you can be able to attract some of these billions to Nigeria. At least they said 100 billion for Africa or developing countries. So you are looking at that. If you attend that program, you can get $1 or $2 billion coming in. Let's be sincere to ourselves.
For the energy transition.
Of course. That's the promise the Europe or the West have made, that we are going to be committed to a 100 billion investment in other areas.
Which is not there anyway.
Which is not there anyway.
Yes.
They may give you one couple of, because they're already developing, they can give you 1 or 2 or 3 billion. But that will not solve your problem. Let's be sincere. God has blessed us with crude and gas. Let's use it to develop. We are yet to develop, to migrate. It's a truth fact. We are yet to develop, to start talking of migrating. How much of us can, okay, we are talking about CNG cars. How many people have migrated to CNG? What is the cost of even migrating to CNG? Talk of electric cars. Let's be sincere. 95 to 98% of our vehicles we use are all on fossil fuel. An investment in that area will cost, if not $1 trillion investment to totally migrate. Just like I said earlier, 75% of our energy generation is on turbines, and turbines depends on gas. So the truth remains, yes, we should be implementing gradual migration, but let's not focus on these very peanuts they throw to us than developing our resources that we have here that can help us. Other countries that are oil-rich countries like the Saudis, the Kuwait, they have used this same oil to develop other sectors. And that should be our focus. Let's maximize the production of crude now to somewhere around 3 million barrels per day or even more, so that we can earn more and deal with issues of infrastructures so that it can be quick and fast and easier for us to migrate when the rest of the Europe are migrating. For now, they may migrate and it will take another 100 years. Those peanuts of 100 billion cannot do anything. So we need to aggressively develop infrastructures around our gas so that we can export. Europe is looking for gas. We need to export more to Europe. The LNG is doing the best it could. Yes, the KKK is there. Then the one that takes to Europe, the gas pipeline down to Morocco to Europe, is upcoming, I'm sure, in the next 2 years. Let's maximize such opportunities so that we can make use of what naturally has been abundantly endowed Nigeria and the rest of African countries to develop other sectors so that we can have a diversified economy.
All right. Mr. Nwachukwu, we'll go on a very short break. When we return, we should be looking at the projected 3.7% growth rate for 2024, vis-a-vis the inflationary trend at the moment, which stands at about 27% and a projection of say, 21.4% in 2024. When we return from the break, stay with us.
The proposed budget seeks to achieve job-rich economic growth, macroeconomic stability, a better investment environment, enhanced human capital development, as well as poverty reduction and greater access to social security. Defense and internal security are recorded top priority. The internal security architecture will be overhauled to enhance law enforcement capabilities and safeguard lives, property, and investment across the country. Human capital is the most critical resource of national development. Accordingly, the budget prioritizes human development with particular attention to children, the foundation of our nation. To improve the effectiveness of our budget performance, government will focus on ensuring value for money, greater transparency, and accountability. In this regard, we will work more closely with development partners and the private sector to address long-standing issues in education.
President Bola Ahmed Tinubu there presenting the 2024 budget estimates to a joint session of the National Assembly. Mr. Steve Nwachukwu is an economist, is my guest on the program today. First, let's look at what the president described as private capital for big ticket infrastructure projects. What does that mean?
I don't know if I'm in position to explain what the Mr. President means, but based on the recent trips that we have seen him, most of the foreign trips, that's what it simply means, that he's expecting some huge investment from the private sectors. So it will come in that form so that it will deal with those infrastructural needs in power generation, in areas that he has talked about, even in our road infrastructures. We expect some of those very policies or bilaterals that he has reached out to some of these foreign investors to mature in 2024.
And maybe more.
And maybe more, just like he is in Dubai.
In Dubai, yes.
Trying to see some of these peanuts that Europe have promised. Just like I said, they also know that, yes, there is no aggressive pursuit of transmission to a cleaner energy. I don't know how many homes now that has a full power solar. And what is the cost? That's the point we should also look at. Even when you are transiting to such cleaner energy, you should also have some level of local content. As we speak, 95% of solar-related are foreign. So we need to, so the point is, let's tell ourselves the truth. You cannot compete with the rest of the world except you are into production. Production is having local content. That's what simply production is. It could be in service, that you have trained your subjects that they can work in Europe, they can work in Germany and bring remittances to you. It's also so that you can use it also to defend the same naira. Our diaspora remittances is second among other sources of our forests. It's because we have well-trained Nigerians who work in Europe, who work in Asia, who work in America, who work in Africa, other parts of Africa, and they are earning legitimate dollars. So it's also a way of investment. So training, just like the education has more than 7% deployment of the budget. So we need such kind of aggressive investment so that you can have Nigerians trained and even retrained in skills that are relevant to the current global market, skills that they can compete and stand the text of the global changing environment. So this is what we need. Such investments in such areas is needed. Our university system needs to be totally, there should be an overhaul of our university system. The curriculums are saying different from what is the reality. I don't know any of these very faculties or courses that we do in our universities that you still come out and still have on a ready-made job. 90% of people, perhaps who are wedding now, who are into one or two things, is totally different from their line of course. So why don't we learn to teach our children to be open to the new modern life? That is the best way than to be looking at those very archaic principles or method or protocols of teaching that will still take you back to vacationary or you being retrained in areas that you needed to acquire some skills. That's what we need to be doing.
Okay, a number of areas that we need to touch on very quickly. Let's look at the projected 3.7% growth rate, much higher than what would be or what is being projected would be for the rest of the world in 2024.
Yeah, the rest of the world is around 3%, and 3.7, 3.8%, 4% is achievable. It's just a question of putting the right policies on ground to incentivize the system so that the private sector, businesses, entrepreneurs will strive. That will give you the aggregate business activities that will generate that GDP you needed, growth that you needed. It's achievable. But based on the World Bank, IMF, and even most of these our local projections or assumptions, is still nothing above 3.1%. World Bank has it at 3.1%. IMF, I think, is still within that region of 3%. And some others are 2.9%. Currently, it's about 2.5%. But you're looking at 3.8%. Like I said, it's achievable. But you need to do the right thing so that you can stimulate the economy so that you can achieve that very GDP. It's achievable.
Now, my question is, or my concern is, does this budget as it is today, as presented by the President to the National Assembly, does it look like one that can achieve this 3.7% GDP growth rate?
I think it boils down to implementation. Budget size, like I said, is often a figure. You can spend and cause inflations to also go when you spend wrongly. It's not all about those monies. It's a question of what and where these monies have been allocated for. When you allocate for social programs, that you give stipends to people, and the people will just be chasing after few goods, and you are not investing in reducing input costs, reducing cost of production, you will not achieve that. Let me tell you, the truth is that when we continue to allow force of market or market forces to determine a lot, it will get to a point, the price elasticity of products, or some of these products you see some of these our entrepreneurs engaging, will totally elapse. That, take for instance, you are producing one item and you move the price to somewhere from 10 naira to 20 naira, 20 naira to 50 naira, 50 naira to 100 naira. It will get to the point that will not be demand for that product anymore. So we should be careful, not allowing inflation to eat up, or allowing our exchange market, or allowing the naira to have a free fall. It's very important. Elasticity, price elasticity is very important. You cannot continue to allow the force of these very market forces to determine. No, you have to moderate it with policies. That's why we have the CBN taking care of the monetary policies, using the tools of the MPR, the cash reserve ratios, and the liquidity ratio to moderate the flow of cash and to at least address the issues around inflation. Government also needs to do a lot around supply chain that will help reduce most of these logistics problems we have, reduce costs of transportation. I don't know why we are still talking. By now, we should have been seeing some of these mass transit buses around and all over Nigeria, not even if not for interstate, intrastate movements, so that it will reduce the cost of living, reduce the cost of movement, because all boils down to input costs. So we should be concerned as Nigerians in these budget line items, where are the investments in these areas that will reduce cost, input cost? This is what
we are waiting for the CNG buses.
That's what we are saying. That's the point. How practical. Not the rhetorics of standing before the chambers, the hollow chambers, present beautiful presentation. I must tell you, President Tinubu made a very fantastic presentation. That's for the rhetorics. That's for the soundbite. That's for the media. We need to see those budget line items being corrupt-free. We don't need to be hearing pardon in this present time. because there is a lot of hardship. And if you don't address them, the hardship will continue. And when it continues, like I said, price elasticity of most of the products, when it totally elapses, a lot of businesses will collapse, a lot of businesses will shut down because Nigerians can no longer afford to patronize those items. And one thing about economies and business environment is not just the capitals or the industrialists, it's also those petty traders. They need to be in the system because they are what we call, at the end of the day, constitute what is called the purchasing power or the aggregate spendings to buy those products made by Dangotes and the rest of them. It's still these very petty traders. If they don't have business, functional business, they can't patronize those heavy industrialists. So we need to make sure that the economy is good enough for these very petty traders to survive so that they can patronize the industrialists.
Now, inflation today stands at about 27% or thereabout. The 2024 budget projects a reduction to 21.4%. How will that happen? Or how do we intend to see that happen?
You can only get that to achieve that when you deal with issues around the input cost. I keep repeating, the input cost has to do with this supply and demand costs.
Okay.
So you have to address. That's why I said this thing, rhetorics around figures, should not suffer now. The real thing is to go to work. When President Bola Ahmed Tinubu stood on that podium that day and said, I am removing fuel subsidy, did he throw in him cash? It was a policy.
He simply said, fuel subsidy is gone.
It's a policy. When he talked about the issues around flotation of Naira and Naira crash, was it throwing cash? It was a policy. That's why I said there should be a posture, policy posture that suggests that you want to deal with these issues that will tackle these rising inflation figures, rising unemployment, and rising costs of living, and making your Naira worse in value. Like I keep saying, the 2027 to me, 2024 budget proposal of 27.5 is big for nothing, is huge. The first ever 27.5 trillion size of budget, but compare it with just the sixth of 2023, is much richer, much valuable, in principle, than the 2024. That is the stories that those in government will not want to hear. But that is the truth.
Well, it will boil down to implementation now.
Beyond implementation, now look at the risk
whatever
again.
impact the 27.5 trillion will make will depend on how much government is committed to its implementation of its policies.
Of course. That is the bedrock of every successful. The deliverability of those budget line items. Like I said, budget around security is good. Well, that's fantastic. Deal with these issues so that farmers will return to their ancestral homes and produce these crop items that are in the basket of food that constitutes that part of the yardstick to determine inflation. If these farmers and you help them with input materials, like agricultural input materials, so that they can have the machineries, they can also have things like fertilizer and the rest of them. So these are the incentives the farmers need so that they can produce this agricultural product cheaper. Once it's cheaper, your inflation figure will come down. That is the truth. Once you deal issues around supply of dollar to the forest market by opening up production of your crude so that those importers, those manufacturers who are looking for one raw material or the other will get exchange rate somewhere lower than even the budget benchmark of 750. That will also reduce the cost. The inflation will come down. These are the truth. They are as practical as that. Deal with these issues around input cost. Once you do it, the figures will start nosediving. But when you continue to devalue your Naira, maybe Naira will get to somewhere around 1,500 because you already have used your budget benchmark. I don't know who advised them to even lift it above this 700. When I first had 700, I was screaming. Now you move it to 750 just because you needed some trillion to mark up the 27 trillion. It's so crazy. If you have 18, 17, 20 trillion size of budget and you have a very reasonable exchange rate, the budget will be fine and good. Because like I said, a project you need to use 1 billion to do, you are now using 1.4. It doesn't make any economic sense.
Okay.
You're just having figure.
Let's look at the proposed borrowing of about 7.8 trillion naira for this budget. All put together, when you put both the privatization proceeds, the 1.05 trillion for multilateral and bilateral, all of it comes close to about 1/3 of the total value of the budget. How does that rate with? We're already suffocating under the weight of so much borrowing that was done by the previous government.
And that's why for some of us, I don't know whether the government is in contest with the previous government. I thought it would have just looked different and be realistic. The previous government was just busy inflating the budget, pushing it so that we can have higher figures and all that. How can you have a budget deficit of 9.9 or 9.1 trillion? Yes, there should be an aggressive, I'm seeing some level of aggressive revenue generation. From somewhere, our tax net is around 10%. You're anticipating to take it to 18%. That's good. We need to start seeing those numbers reading that at least you are making the money. But otherwise, it's fallacy. What I can tell you for sure of for free is that what the government has recently succeeded doing is just the devaluation. The difference in the devaluation, like I said, from 435 to 700, that's enough money for you. And these are paper, these are empty money. Let me say it again for the one term of time. If you concentrate on figures, you are not going to achieve anything with your budget. You should concentrate on the strength of that naira. The naira is the central thing here. If the naira value of that naira to purchase an item is strong, your budget will make sense. You can have 40 trillion, 45 trillion, 50 trillion, while the strength of your naira to purchase those budget line items is weak. It's invariably nothing. It's more like robbing Peter and paying Paul, and the people are being impoverished. So government needs to be sincere. It's an appeal to government. Please, deal with issues around input costs, and that will help you to defend the naira. And if naira has its right value, please, nothing stops you. A benchmark is like a stop gap. You can reverse it to somewhere 650, because what it simply means now that naira cannot come down to anything below 750. That's simply what it means. No matter anything they supply in the market, it cannot come below 750, because government, who is the highest spender, who determines exchange, because it's one of those powers of the federation that he has to determine exchange rate. Exchange rate cannot come below 750.
That's the official rate.
That's official now. No, you can have other official rate of CBN, but the budget benchmark is 750. So all transactions of government is within and peg minimum of 750. So imagine the private, which is the CBN, where you go for flotation, may somewhere hit 1,000 based on this. When we had it at 435 early this year, it was around 600 and 550. Because most often, when you have your budget benchmark, it only helps those heavy spenders like NNPC. Those are the ones that will benefit as we speak, because they are the ones that, receive proceeds of dollar. They will ask federal government, we need to import some petroleum product, and it will be at that rate. The rest will always be within the floating or market price. So government ought to have done something lower than even the 700, and that would have helped also. But let's see what will happen. Let's give them the benefit of that, and I'm very sure they are going to correct. There is nothing wrong correcting some of the mistakes. Like I do advise, these issues around cost, which has to do with the removal of fuel subsidy, you can still reverse it like you have done by partially saying, I'm not going to allow the price to go up. Nothing stops you to by increasing it or doing it in a further 20, 30, 40, 50% removal until subsidy is no more.
All right. Thank you so much. Steve Nwachukwu is an economist, and he has joined me in looking at the 2024 budget proposal that was presented before a joint session of the National Assembly by Mr. President on Wednesday. Thank you so much, Mr. Nwachukwu, for your time.
Always my pleasure.
And thank you for investing your time with us. We look forward to being with you again when we bring you another edition of People, Politics, and Power. Bye for now.